Hello everyone, welcome to session 1 of LTEC 620 Visual Design. In this video, we're going to introduce the course. We'll do this by providing a high-level overview of the course content and learning objectives, and then we'll review a few basic aspects of the course structure and some other important information to help you get started. So let's jump right in. What is LTEC 620 all about? Well, as the name suggests, it's a course about visual design. We can ease our way towards understanding what that means by examining what each of those words, visual and design, actually mean. Of course, the word visual suggests a reference to sight. If something is visual or visible, it is perceivable by the eye. The word design, on the other hand, is a bit more complicated. It's a noun and a verb. Design can be an action, an industry, or a product. A critical part of the concept of design is the notion that objects can be designed so that they function according to intentions. This concept, functioning according to intentions, is powerful. The idea is that anything that is designed has intention behind it, and such an idea should prompt us to step back and situate a course on visual design within a broader context. In fact, we should ask ourselves, what is the context in which we are studying visual design? In LTEC 620, we are not studying visual design in a school of arts or a college of design. Instead, we're studying visual design in a college of education. So what does that tell us? It should remind us that we have to think about the functions and intentions of visual design through the lens of education. In fact, here are two overarching questions that help us make the connection between visual design and education. The first question asks, how do people learn from visual representations? The second question asks, how can learning from visual representations be supported? In order to prepare ourselves to be able to adequately address these overarching questions, we're going to need to draw on more than just one field. We're also going to pull on a related yet distinct field known as visual literacy. Simply put, visual literacy is the ability to interpret, use, and create visual media in ways that advance thinking, decision-making, communication, and learning. This semester, we're going to be hanging out at the intersection of visual design and visual literacy, constantly returning to the questions about the role of visual representations in learning. Now that we know where we are, the next natural question is, what are we going to do? How are we going to make sure that we are constantly coming back to this overarching theme? This brings us to our learning objectives. Our first learning objective states that we will analyze and evaluate visual representations from different perspectives. If we look at this learning objective and relate it to Bloom's taxonomy, we'll notice that we're focusing on analyze and evaluate. And some of the relevant content that is going to allow us to analyze and evaluate visual representations from different perspectives includes taxonomies of visual representations. What are all the different types of visual representations that are out there? What's the difference between symbolic, iconic, and lexical representations? In terms of different perspectives, we're going to learn that we can analyze visual representations from functional, cognitive, administrative, and aesthetic perspectives. And finally, we'll learn a little bit about different strategies that we can use to help us analyze and evaluate different types of representations. Now let's take a look at an example. Here are 3 representations of Bloom's taxonomy. You'll notice that the content of each of these representations is more or less the same. However, the structure or the layout of this content, visually speaking, is different. So a question you might consider is, how might these visual representations differ in terms of their meaning? In other words, if you were to give these representations to people, what do you think they would learn about Bloom's taxonomy? And does the visual representation of this information change what people might take away from the representation? Our second learning objective states that we're going to create visual representations using graphic design elements, principles, and process. Notice the emphasis on the create aspect of Bloom's taxonomy. Some of the content we're going to bring to the table related to this learning objective is learning to use design software and tools. We're going to learn about different design elements such as line, color, and texture, different design principles such as unity and repetition, and of course we'll spend a considerable amount of time learning about the process of design and how to iterate and move through a design project iteratively. Here's another example. On this slide, we're seeing two different visual designs for a high school chemistry simulation. My question for you is to think about which one do you think supports learners more effectively and why? Now, we won't get into all of the details right now, but I can tell you that the answer to which one of these designs supports learners more effectively is not as simple as you might think. Our third learning objective states that we're going to analyze and evaluate the role of visual representations and visual literacy in education, both formal and informal and across settings. Our two verbs on Bloom's taxonomy, again, we have evaluate and analyze. And in terms of content, we're going to take a look at standards of visual literacy. We're going to do some reading about visual thinking and reasoning. We'll talk a little bit about critical perspectives and critical viewing. And then, of course, we'll make references to other types of literacies, such as data literacy, information literacy, and multimedia literacy. And for a final example, here are three examples of visual representations common in today's visual culture. And as you look at these, my question for you, again, within the context of education is, how are altered images, animated GIFs, and emoji enhancing or hindering student learning? At a minimum, we have to say that these types of visual representations are changing our approach to teaching and learning. And one of our responsibilities is to understand how can we support learners in a world that's this visual. Okay, so that kind of gives you a brief overview of the course itself. Now let's take a look at just some of the basics of the course. Now the first thing that I want you to take note of is the overview module in Canvas. Now there's a couple of important links and documents here. So first and foremost, at the very top is the course syllabus. That is a Google Doc that you can view. Just click that link and I encourage everyone to take a close look at the details of the course syllabus. The second link listed here is the design software. We're going to be using an image editing package called Gravit Designer. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And then, of course, there's also a link to the office hour sign up and then my virtual office space, which is Zoom. Now, Gravit Designer is the tool that we're going to recommend folks use because it's a cross-platform tool and it really does design work pretty easily. Now, if you already have something installed that you prefer to use, such as Photoshop or Fireworks or Illustrator, go ahead and feel free to use those. This is just a tool that if someone doesn't have anything to use is a good starting place. And then finally, it can be used in the browser or it can be installed on Macs, Windows, and even Linux and Chrome OS machines. So it's really something that should work for most of us. Now, in terms of office hour sign up, you saw the link already. The office hour sign up sheet is an editable Google Doc. To begin with, we're going to have office hours every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. There's 20-minute slots, so just go into this document and sign up. If those times don't work for you, just shoot me an email and we'll make alternative arrangements. Now, take a look here at the typical weekly structure. Now, we know that this is a 6-week semester. Each week is a different session, and each session follows the same layout. In other words, you're going to get presentation content. You will get assigned readings. Be sure to pay attention to whether or not the readings are required or optional. For session 1, both readings are required. And then the last section is the assignment section, and this will detail all of the tasks that are due in this particular session. Now pay attention to each assignment because the due dates, even though it is in one session, may be different. So here you can see the session 1 survey is actually due May 23rd, whereas the other two assignments are due May 27th. So make sure you pay attention to those due dates. And finally, just a few tips for success. Please, please, please review the presentation files or videos. Those are super important. Also, it's important that you read the assigned readings and take notes. It's expected that you cite the readings in your critical reflection posts. So make sure you do that. You'll see in the instructions we're very clear about how to do that, but I'm emphasizing it here again. Also, we really want to encourage you to plan ahead on the design assignments. Those assignments may involve multiple steps across multiple settings. Don't wait until the last minute or you'll really find yourself in a bind. At the beginning of the week, when the content is released, take a look at it, think about your schedule, and come up with a plan that gives you a couple of opportunities to work on things. And then finally, this is a rigorous graduate course. It's super important that you monitor your own understanding. Ask for help when you need it. Our job is to make sure you're successful. You can do that by sending an email or signing up for office hours if you want to meet face-to-face. And there you have it, folks, our course introduction for LTEC 620. That's all for now. See you online. Thanks.